Welcome to Squirrel, the podcast for distracted writers, hosted by Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. Hey everybody, welcome to Squirrel. This is Jody.
This is Candace.
And we are hopefully being closer to spring than we were last time. I'm smelling the green in the air, or at least I want to smell the green in the air. Didn't help that the day we recorded this, it's been snowing all day.
Yes.
Because,
my tulips are coming up, so that's either a good sign or a bad sign. I'm not even
perfect.
sure.
Absolutely.
They're so confused. Poor things.
So in keeping in the spirit of spring, we are going to talk about spring cleaning your manuscript. So most of this is going to be advice on self-editing and small things you can do to make your story better.
And Jody really spent a lot of time making this as cute as possible. It's just got so many little
gushing with bad puns.
Yes, it's very adorable.
I try. All right. So while many of you are cleaning out your closets or reorganizing your homes, why not take that same energy and apply it to your writing? We're going to tackle the art of self-editing. So whether your manuscript feels clutter or your characters need a little refresh or your prose could use some dusting off, this episode will guide you through practical ways to tidy it up. All right, so grab your metaphorical broom.
Woo.
We're about to sweep away. Okay, this is so corny. So corny. We're about to sweep away weak sentences, polish up plot holes, and make your story shine.
Ting. I love it. It's just so much fun. So, I mean, honestly, do you like spring clean? This is kind of off topic, but...
When it starts feeling nicer, like I'm itching to get outside start working in my yard again.
Yeah, I like to work.
I will have things in my house that start bugging me but it doesn't matter if it's spring or fall. It's just whenever the passion seizes me, that's when I'll do it. So it's usually not in the spring.
It's when the flowers start blooming is when I just go, okay, I have to throw away everything. Get everything new and gut my house, I guess. But
I say that seems like a healthy coping mechanism.
Yeah, it's kind of
absolutely
nice, I think.
For sure. All right, so my first point that I wanted to just dive straight into is all about weak verbs and passive voice, because this is one of the things that I think is really easy for us to slip into if we're not being careful or if we're just inexperienced. It's a hard thing to spot until someone's like, hey, by the way, you could make this sound so much better if you just swapped out your verbs for better verbs. Mm-hmm. So what would be a stronger verb versus a weak verb? So if you're seeing a lot of was's or a lot of is's, a lot of those to be verbs, like that is a red flag that you could probably use better verbs.
What do you do in your specific manuscript? What do you do in finding those be verbs?
So back when I was trying to do first book and I was I didn't have a method, I would absolutely use Control Find and just have it highlight words that I knew were problematic. And then I would go through and see if I could make them better. Now I've done the editing process enough times that when I'm reading through it, they kind of just stand out on their own. But now I feel it's a little bit more natural to find, like when you're just using Control Find and you're like, I can't have was. No, you can have was. It's okay. It's just you really shouldn't have a bazillion of them.
Yes.
Because one is great, 20,000, not so much.
I think it's an interesting exercise just to highlight at least one page and see how many there are, because it's a rather eye-opening
Yeah, it's very educational. No shame. I mean, we're all learning. And if that helps you just catch yourself in possibly what might be becoming a bad habit or just something you need to do when you're getting your first draft out, you can always make things stronger. And then passive voice, that also comes up, if you see was a lot, sometimes it means you're using passive voice. And so if you have sentences that look like the book was edited by the author, where the person or the person doing the action comes at the end of the sentence, and I know that's super, super technical, but it's so much stronger if you're the author edited the book and then the verb is edit instead of was.
Mm-hmm. The strength is there.
And then the strength is, I mean, you don't have to be complicated. Sometimes it's a matter of just flipping that sentence around.
Mm-hmm. I love it. You took all the good ones. You know that, right?
When it's my episode, I choose the best ones first.
Okay. So point number 2, I have dust off your dialogue. And I love dialogue. It's one of my very favorite things to write, actually. There are some times when I will just write scenes of nothing but dialogue and I won't put any description in there, and I have to go back there and put description in. I know that some writers struggle with dialogue. The tricky thing about dialogue is you can't make it sound so natural that it's boring. It still has to have some gain in the direction of the story, but you need to make it, rather enchanting in some way, engaging for the brain. And so there's a tricky balance in understanding what good dialogue would be versus what boring dialogue would be. And as I said, I tend to write a bunch of dialogue, and that's when my edit comes in. I have to really narrow down all of this is not going anywhere. So that's if you think that your dialogue might be a little bit too wordy or it's kind of going nowhere, remember that your dialogue should always go back to the story. It should lead somewhere within the story, so that if it's just meaningless chatter, you're going to lose your reader and they're going to come out of the book. And you never want them to do that. You always want to keep them engaged in the story.
Well, and if you think about if you're eavesdropping when someone's talking on the phone, sometimes it's really boring stuff and you just kind of zone out. You're like, I know exactly what they're going to say next. But when they're talking about something juicy and you lean in and you're only hearing one side of this conversation, but you're like, I really would love to hear what the other side of this conversation is. Like, you want your dialogue to have that same kind of punchiness. Because if it's just like two people talking about how they're going to take care of their cat this weekend, you're like, I hope the cat is a central character in this story. Otherwise, this is boring.
Yeah. I think that because I have screenwriter training, that has helped me better with dialogue, because you can't have any dialogue that isn't leading back to the main point. So that is a good, if you struggle with dialogue, maybe look into seeing how to write a screenplay and seeing if that helps you elevate your skills.
For sure.
One more point I always want to say is the saids. There are a lot of times when people get very said heavy. You know what I'm talking about, like he said, she said, or they say, or whatever. Saids can be a really good way to elevate the description in your story if you don't want to continually say he said, she said, because we can reference our old episode, but we did this like a year and a half ago. But the audience knows who's speaking. They are smart enough to gauge that, and so you can use it. Those are opportunities to bring in a little bit more description and life into your story. Okay, there you go.
Yay. Our next point is decluttering. We need to declutter our overused words and phrases. All right, so there's different kinds of words that tend to end up feeling redundant. So one of those is obvious things that you don't actually need to say. So she nodded her head. What else would she be nodding? You don't need to say her head. He flew through the sky. Now, until they invent being able to fly through water or jello, yeah, you don't need to say through the sky. There's a whole bunch of these. He stood up. Well, I don't see him standing down unless he's in the military or he's a cop. So there's a bunch of different tiny words that you don't need. And when you end up having a lot of them, it makes it harder to get to the point of what you're trying to say in the work. There's also just these filler words, really very just like we say like on the podcast all the time because that is a filler word that we use. We see so and like as filler
words.
Those
are all Utah
which is fine.
Things, so.
But when you see those words appearing in your writing, see what happens if you take them out, if it reads more cleanly, if you get to your point faster, if the story hits stronger, because they usually aren't necessary at all.
Yeah.
Unless you're doing dialogue and they do talk like that, which is okay.
I do use intensifiers quite a bit. And it's like very and really. And so those are words that I often have to highlight and get rid of. That's my bad, but I love those words.
Well, and sometimes if you're using really and very, it means you're not finding the right verb. Mm-hmm. He ran very quickly. He sprinted.
Yeah, exactly.
So there's that. And then there's also, these are called filter words. And we could do an entire episode on filter words, but it's when you have words like she felt, he listened, they heard, it puts distance between the writing and the reader. So here's an example. She felt a cold hand grab the back of her neck. Well, I mean, if she's the main character, we know whose person is doing the thinking. So if it just said a cold hand grabbed the back of her neck, like now it's happening right now. We don't have that distance between, yeah, she felt it. Well, of course she felt it. We're in her point of view. So, tightening up filter words can also make the writing seem much more powerful and present.
And clean.
And very clean.
Look at how clean your manuscript is.
We are decluttering right and left.
Okay, number 4. When I do spring cleaning, I often have to clean out my fridge. So I come from a rather regulated background, and we clean our fridges every quarter. So that has become a thing that I do every quarter is clean my fridge really well. So my number 4 point, throw out what stinks.
It's fair.
Let's throw out what stinks. Okay. So what I mean by this is don't be afraid to cut out what's not working. I think that especially when I was a new writer, there were scenes that I really loved and I wanted to keep in there. But when I went through the manuscript with my editor, they cut out like 40,000 words. And I wish I would have known that before my heart was broken. I would rather have cleared out those chunks myself instead of having it pointed out to me. So don't be afraid to, if something's not working, you can cut it, you can take it into a different direction. Don't be afraid of that. And don't be afraid of getting rid of scenes that you worked so hard on, but aren't working right for your story. So
you can always use them as newsletter fodder later.
That's true.
Inside peaks.
Pacing is really important in your story. So you have to keep up with that specific pace. If there's a whole chapter about how awesome this one character is, but it's not working, it's not needed to enhance your story or move it along, it's best to just chop it. Yes. And again, give it to your newsletter people and see what they have to say.
You can always do interesting things with like bonus material that didn't make it into the book. Like in the age of DVDs, they used to have bonus material and it'd be like, yeah, these are scenes that didn't make it into the movie. Here you go. And we were like, I can see why you cut that, but still, that's funny.
That is funny. You're right.
I love it when they do that.
I always love the outtakes. You're right.
Well, and I find, like, if I'm reading and I start skimming my own stuff, it means what I've written is boring. And that's bad. I need to be able to be, like, really engrossed in it, even though I've read it several times. And there will be scenes where it's just like, ooh, I want to cling on every word. And then there's other chapters where it's just like, why is this here? I'm bored. Yeah. All right. Our next point is deep cleaning the character arc. Give it a good scrub. Pin them down. Put them in the tub. All right. So this would happen in a larger content level edit. So you're not going to want to do this while you're still drafting. In fact, any of these things, you probably want to wait until you've got your main story kind of pinned down. Don't worry about your wases until you have your story. It's okay. But once you get that down, one of the first things you really need to analyze is how your character is behaving and if their motivations make sense and if it's evolving naturally from one part of the story to the next. And also if their emotional responses are consistent. I got in trouble. It was my last book. I should have known better. It was my most recent book. I should have known better. Where I have this one character who's very zen. She is slow to anger. She prizes being just a very level-headed character. And in the last book, she gets annoyed to the point where she starts fist fighting with another, like the main character, because she is so angry at the circumstance. And yeah, I got called out on that. And they're like, this character wouldn't do that. She would not break their nose just because they have to go sleep out in the forest instead of in an inn. Like, she doesn't care. Why is she breaking noses? So I had to take that out.
That's a very good point. I like that.
Yeah, so if their motivations are unclear or don't make sense, that could indicate you have a bigger problem that you should probably dig into before doing the smaller edits.
Sounds awesome. Okay, so for me, point 6, I said organize your manuscript. And this has not much to do with editing specifically, but how your manuscript is organized is very beneficial for when you're writing and you need to go to specific places. I bring this up. So I'm talking about navigation tools, if everyone knows what I'm talking about. You can create navigation within your manuscript with different titles, different chapter headings, and so you can click to different places rather easily. I bring this up because a friend who is a seasoned writer sent me a manuscript not too long ago, and it was just word scrolling constantly.
Wall of text.
Yes, it was. I mean, he had separated it by like it was titled with chapters, but there was no navigation, and so I would get lost a lot in reading that. So I went through and I put in my own navigation, and he's like, "How did you do that?" And he's a seasoned writer, and he had never used navigation tools, and you can do that in any of your software that you're using. Word,
Oh yeah.
Google Docs, Scrivener. You can use it in anything. So I thought that, maybe people don't know exactly how to do that. So I definitely wanted to mention that here, that it is an amazing tool for you when you're writing a lot, getting really deep in the story, to have those navigation tools. You can put, like, in my manuscript I'm working on right now, there are honestly different books together. It's like this part 1, part 2, part 3, and then I have subheadings with all the other ones so that I know exactly where everything is. So play around with that tool. It's very easy. You can just put in navigation. It's like the search and find, but and I constantly have my navigation up so I can click here and there all the time.
And what's really handy is you can drag, and this is only on Word. Google Sheets doesn't have this, which makes me angry.
Sheets or
Docs. Sheets is Excel. That's different. Different episode. Where if you need to move a scene to a different place in the manuscript, you can drag the header to a different place inside the mini outline that it creates for you. And it moves the whole scene. Because I remember this where I had to move entire chapters, and I was like highlighting the whole thing and then hitting copy and then trying to put it where it's supposed to go and then going back and finding the thing that I tried to copy. I'm like, 20 minutes later, this could have been a 2-minute problem.
Yes.
If I'd known about the headings at the time.
And sometimes I do this a lot, or I write with different people's perspectives, and organizing a book. Sometimes you just need to move with different perspectives in order for it to work seamlessly.
Yeah.
So, hello, that is an amazing tool. Everyone.
Very, very nice.
I love it.
And if you're still putting scenes in entirely different documents, we're going to slap your hand. You're making life hard for yourself. Please keep everything in the same document.
Please do. Yes.
Please.
Okay.
All right. Our next point is all about freshening up descriptions. Now, this is frosting on the proverbial cake here, but really good descriptions can make all the difference in your story. So if you are using vibrant and immersive descriptions, if you're using all of those sensory details, then great. That's amazing. But if you find your descriptions are repetitive, if you are using cliches are not your friends. Cliches are boring. People will roll over a cliche when they read it, and it will make zero impact on them because they're like, oh yeah, they swam like fishes. Like, duh. Like that doesn't give much. So if you feel like you've heard it before, see if you can find an even better way of doing it, because it's going to grab the reader far better and keep their interest, which is what you want. You don't want them losing their interest. So freshen up.
That's beautiful. Number 8. All right. I mean, I had a bunch of different ones to pick from. Jody really went through, and there's a bunch of things that we didn't actually hit. But for number 8, which is our last one, I said vanquishing the nargles.
Which requires explanation.
We all know what nargles are, right?
I have a feeling some people are going to need an explanation.
Okay, well, so this is Luna Lovegood from Harry Potter. Mentions nargles, like she wears like a little trinket around her. I think it was like a cork from a bottle that she wears around her neck to keep away the nargles. And then there's like when Harry and Cho were going to kiss under the mistletoe, nargles like mistletoe apparently. It's never explained what nargles are, but what they are to me is mischief and distraction. That's what I mean. So in your manuscript, I'm asking you right now, do you have a lot of comments in your manuscript?
You mean like the ones saying, please insert an actual dialogue tag here because you're cheating?
That is exactly what I mean. There are so many. We often put like comments, like I'm very famous for put action here, put scene here.
Remember to name
fill
this
in
guy.
Info here. Right. This needs to be XX name. Or
this guy needs a name.
I have that all over. And those are, you know what? There's times that we need to just take care of that. And they're distracting. So that's what I mean by vanquishing the nargles. Is get rid of the distractions that are keeping you from cleaning up your manuscript, for one thing, the outside distractions, but also the inside distractions inside your manuscript. Maybe it's time to look at your comments and fill in those things that you've been avoiding. So that is spring cleaning, right? We are avoiding things that we don't really want to do, but they need to get done. And so maybe it's time to tackle them and let them, I don't know, you're going to have to tackle them sometime. So might as well be now.
That weird part in chapter 3 that you're like, I know this isn't working, but I don't want to work on it. That's your nargle. Go fix your nargle.
I want that on a shirt.
Go squish your nargle.
Go squish your nargle, everyone.
Oh, no trademark.
See, that was a pretty good. I think that worked really well.
Sure. All right. I don't know if it's just me. I think most people, it feels really good to clean things up. It feels really good to see an organized space, an organized document, to see that you've made progress on something where you're like, this was a tangled mess before, and now it looks lovely. It feels really good. So a lot of the reasons we don't like doing the editing process, the self-editing process, the fixing the nargles process, is because we don't know what to do. Is because we're like, I know I'm supposed to fix this. Where do I start? Well, start easy. Do a control find on your was's and just see how naughty you've been.
It's
go through.
Right?
Yeah. See how many extraneous that's are just floating around in your manuscript. There's a bunch of how many felts or head nods or random smiles.
I smile all the time.
Yeah. The characters who just are smiling instead of actually interacting. Yeah, you can make that better. You can do better. So I'm hoping that you can use this episode as a guide to at least seize one thing that you can do to help you self-edit your manuscript and bring you one step closer to that goal of being finished, because we love finishing things.
It's true.
Nothing better.
What's the listener assignment? Is that the
All
listener
right.
assignment?
No, that was just me finishing things up.
Okay.
I was rounding the thought out, as it were. Right. So now it's your turn. Choose one of the things we discussed in the episode and apply it to your current work in progress. I do feel like I did just say that. We should have edited this. That would have been helpful. Okay, so your listener assignment is to take something we talked about and use it to help improve a scene or a chapter or something where you're like, I could do this better. Go for it. You've got this.
You do. You only have to do it
Alright.
in the spring too, right?
Sure. If if you ever want to finish, though, do it when you need it.
That's true.
Yeah. Alrighty. What is our next episode about, Candy?
Okay. We're on episode 35, and that means books on the fives. Yay!
Woo!
So next episode, we're going to talk about fairy tale retellings, and it should be a lot of fun. I think the books on the fives are always really fun, but yeah, I think fairy tale retellings are things that people know. Of course, we know fairy tales, but maybe we don't know that, how they've been retold or any other exciting ideas. So yeah, there we go. We're going to talk about that.
Terrific. I can't wait. Oh, wait, we're doing it in 5 minutes.
you can't.
I can wait. All right. A huge thanks for listening today. If you appreciated anything we said during this episode or in the past, remember we have a Patreon and a buy us a coffee, or in our case, buy us a book, because heaven knows we like books. And liking and sharing is caring. This has been terrific. Thank you, Candy.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to the Squirrel Podcast for the Distracted Writer with Candace J. Thomas and Jody L. Milner. Please like and subscribe to our podcast for updates and new episodes, and find more information at our website, squirrelpodcast.com. Stay distracted, everyone.
Were you worried about the vanquishing the nargles?
I wasn't quite gripping what
what
you were going from, because I didn't get the reference.
Aha. Yes.
Thus, there might be some people out there who
That
need
don't know what nargles
explained.
are. I knew that people wouldn't know what nargles were.